need to have my glasses on. And we're live. Hello.
We are. Here we go.
Good evening for those of us based somewhere where it's evening time. It's morning here in Australia, so I'm really happy. The sun is shining, although it's a bit chilly in the air. It's winter time here. But it's a lovely day, and I am so excited to be kicking off the Make Change Happen live series back on, because this time around we have something really special, something that you guys can apply straight away. It's not about frameworks, it's not about theoretical applications of concepts. This is about actually moving the needle, actually doing the change work and seeing the shifts in real life, in real time. Now, my guest this morning is Bob McGannon. We are so blessed to have Bob with us. Bob, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Probably from following my feed and from the things that I have done, Bob and I are longtime collaborators. We love working together and we have lots of fun doing it. So I thought, who's the best person to kick off this session with? Bob's got an enormous amount of experience, not only about change and project management, but actually running experiments and doing shifts and seeing how they happen. So today, what we're going to talk about is how do we get a different perspective of, when things are happening and starting to run fast and there's so many concurrent changes and processes going fast. How will we perhaps know when not to follow the rule book? And that's some of the tricky nuances that we will be coming up with. We've got a set of experiments that we'd like to cover today. They are on the landing page. So if you guys head on to ChristinaCharenkova.com/experiments, you can grab a copy of those. And without further ado, we're going to launch into the first experiment. Bob, how excited are you?
I'm very excited. This is great, and this is my favorite one. So, let's go. Let's go.
Let's do it. So this is kind of your signature experiment, right?
It is.
You love talking about this. Plus, it features a dog, which is, I think, one of your favorite animals.
That's true too.
So this is the guide dog case. And it's a guide dog case because as a guide dog, you are taught, or the dog is taught, to follow certain rules and how to lead the owner to a certain outcome. But of course, the dog has to use its intelligence for when to apply certain brakes and to push back on certain commands. So we thought this is really interesting application to when it comes to change management, and to project management, anything that includes organizational shifts, business transformation. So there's a lot of frameworks and a lot of processes and a lot of motion, I guess, a lot of viewpoints of how things should be done. And if we could just stop and take account of maybe one of those instructions that can be challenged. Bob, I might hand over to you here to give us like a little bit more of a intro into the actual experiment.
Yeah, let's do this. And I want to reiterate the item of the guide dog. The guide dog has more information or different information than its master does, because the guide dog, particularly for those who are vision impaired, the dog can see things that its master cannot. So walking across the street, if there's a pothole, the dog has to understand that while the master's telling me to go forward, I can't go into the pothole. I got to go around it.
Yeah.
And when I look at change initiatives, particularly if it's a broad brush change being launched because of a senior leader's idea of things that should be changed, maybe you're trying to get in tune with the marketplace, or a merger between two organizations. You say, okay, we're going to consolidate our processes so we're the same. And I guarantee the senior leaders do not know the nuances between those two processes in a merged organization. They may have the same labels, they may look the same, they may smell the same, but actually executing them in a merged environment could be really complex. And so the idea of the experiment of the guide dogs case is to say, if you walk into a senior leader and say, this isn't going to work, that's going to be a really short discussion. Okay. It's really be a really short discussion. So it's a matter of, let's just do dry run. Let's come up with a scenario that says, Mr. Manager, let me just take you through the 4 steps or 5 steps that we use when we go through this process. And here's an input. And here's how one side of the business does it. Here's how the other side of the business does it. And instead of saying it doesn't work, it's going to create a complexity, just quickly take them through those steps and have the senior leader figure it out. It's like the guide dog brings information and data and safety to its master. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't suggest, you just come up with that and you go straight to the senior leader in this experiment. It's the experiment ultimately can, should, and would happen with peers. Practice. Because if you take 25 minutes going through the process, I guarantee you the senior leader is going to go, what's this all about? Get to the point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you really need to be concise as to how to get there. And you want to make sure your message is very, very clear. So the idea of the guide dog case is to take information that you have that the senior leader likely does not have. And then how can you reveal this information to them in such a way that it is meaningful, it's substantive, and it inspires the senior leader to go, I get it. We just can't do that easily. Let's, start this initiative to merge. Let's start this initiative to change data. Let's start this initiative to overcome, the issue that you bring forward.
Yeah. That's all right. And I like what you said about bringing people along the journey. So don't do it by yourself. You almost need a coalition of people, especially if you're talking to a senior leader. You'd like to build that support network around you to go, hey, we've thought about this and we've challenged each other, and we think this is the one thing that perhaps we need to rethink.
And I think a lot of people are intimidated by going to senior leader because they have this experience, they have all this authority, they can say what you're supposed to, you want to do, and you're supposed to do it. And I like the analogy of the guide dog. The guide dog is not more intelligent than the master. And the guide dog's been trained in some specific things, but the real specific thing that they've been trained on is to understand the master's goal and know what it takes to get there, which might be different than what the master asks the dog to do. And I think it's a great analogy because while this senior leader may be intimidating, they may come across very forceful, that sort of thing, they genuinely don't know things at a process level in the vast majority of instances. So you actually have information that they do not have, that they need to understand, so you can work on a direction, a set of processes, an approach that actually makes sense, so they don't fall into a pothole when they thought they were just crossing the road.
That makes a lot of sense. I also thought of maybe a couple of more scenarios that we can apply that. So one is to challenge like a senior leader's thinking. Another few that I was thinking about, just like, for example, when big rollouts set go live dates. And sometimes those go live dates can be misaligned with business critical milestones that are not necessarily thought through. So that's one really good way of challenging those, documented, tested with a few trusted peers and escalate it for a discussion, of course, and say, hey, this is something that we think it's not going to work, not going to land for us.
Yeah.
Another one that perhaps is playing out at the moment is we hear a lot of organizations are going through restructures, through teams reorganizing and changing their makeup. And one of the things that I've had to deal with quite a bit in my career is, as the change team, as the project management team, we hear about some of those restructures, and we're asked to keep quiet and not to necessarily further the communications.
Right.
So one way of dealing with this is to document what the risk is and what the implications of that staying silent is, or not sharing that information forward, and share that with the leadership. And again, build a coalition around it, and make sure that you test it out as a concept, and then challenge the thinking of the leadership.
And I think sometimes that challenge could be just, I know you're asking me not to communicate this, but it's going to be evident that something is up based on the steps we take in the project. So for instance, if there's a team of people that are going to be laid off if you're in some countries, or made redundant if you're in others, right? They're going to be losing their jobs, right? And on this project, you need someone with their skill. And they want the project to go forward, but they say, but don't engage these people. They're going to be gone. So you go and get an outside contractor. Well, everybody's going to go, why would you get an outside contractor when you've got this team of people right here? What's going on, right? And that's kind of that's very simplistic, but there's often, directions that senior leaders want to take, and they don't think through the possibilities of how evident is going to be in your change initiative or your project initiative, whatever the case may be, with what you do or don't do versus, the environment. And, they tell you, okay, go ahead, keep going. It's going to be obvious that something's happening. So, they're telling you not to communicate it. You're just communicating it indirectly instead of directly. And often when that happens, people are going to blow it up and make it even worse. Their imagination is going to take hold, and it's going to be so. That's a really interesting guide dog case when you can see the steps that you have to take and how they would be perceived as logical or not logical based on the situation, and non-logical ones are going to be, okay, something's changing, and people are going to not think it's good news, and again, typically make it even worse than it's going to be.
Yeah, and it erodes the trust. It erodes the whole team ethic. It's just bad news. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Great. So, a couple of really juicy ones there, and I hope people can apply to their scenario and into their particular case that they're going through at the moment, a particular change scenario. If you are just joining us, please feel free to give us your hot change questions. We are ready and really eager to answer them live on air. If you would like to grab a copy of the experiments that we're talking about, they are located at the link just at the bottom of the screen. So go ahead, grab those. Now we're going to launch into the second experiment, which I think it's one of my favorites. It's called the optional reply. Now, the optional reply it's kind of like keep doing the same thing just because that's how we do things, right? This is the process, and I'm following the process, and the process says I need to get so-and-so's approval before I move forward, or it says I need to tick this tick box and I haven't quite yet gotten there. So it's kind of following something blindly, or because the system tells us to follow it blindly. And this is about how can you jump forward, move the needle forward without making a big deal out of it. So say that you're needing to move a deliverable forward, or you need an approval for a deliverable, one of your project deliverables, and you've been chasing a particular manager. They're busy with business as usual. They're busy with their 3 other projects. They're not giving you a response. You're trying to catch them by the water cooler. You're trying to catch them in between meetings, and nothing's happening. They're just pushing back. Bob, I'm going to throw that to you. What would you do?
So, I mean, first of all, I'm going to see if there's somebody else that can get his or her attention and say,
Yeah.
hey, this is being held up. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
and and I'd also use my judgment. Maybe you go ahead anyway. If this step in the process is a formality, you've had enough instances when the situation is such that this manager approves that. I think that's a risky thing to do, but I will admit that I've done it. I wrote a book called Intelligent Disobedience, and that's probably an example of that. But the thing that I'll do most often, if I can't find another I can't get a hold of this person, I'm not getting a response, I can't find another person that can talk to them and say, hey, could you get a response, is to send a subsequent email that says, I believe the business would want us to move forward. Not stopping here in this process is we're worse off than if we go forward, and maybe there's another implication of that is not so positive, but it's not as bad as stopping right here. So I'll send a note that says, in an absence of a response from you and my understanding of the situation, in 1 day's time, 2 days' time, 5 days' time, whatever it is that makes sense, I'm going to go forward as if you have done this.
Yeah.
Unless you tell me otherwise.
You give them forewarning. You say, hey, I've waited and waited, but this is what I'm going to do. I need to move this forward. And unless I hear from you, I'm going to move it forward.
Right. And that experiment, that is an experiment in and of itself to see how that person responds. The other experiment element associated to this is, and again, you don't have to do this alone. You could send that note to the peers that maybe couldn't get a hold of them and say, okay, you work with this leader, him or her.
Yeah.
What would they think of this? Right. And part of that could be, here are the pros and cons of each. Here's the pros and cons of just staying where we're at and waiting for approval or waiting for the information, right? And this is the implication to the business. And here's the implication to the business if we go forward, without, an approval or without this step happening, making some assumption as to what the answer would be. And I think even it's sort of it starts with a thought experiment on those two pro and con exercises, right? The second stage of the experiment, if you will, is running that by, a peer or somebody that knows this individual that's not being responsive. And then the third step of the experiment is what kind of response you get, if you even get a response, when you send this to the decision maker or the person that's holding up the train right at the moment, because they haven't responded. So, and I have to just add another element to this. The pros and cons thing can be very, very important, because sometimes senior leaders, with the breadth of responsibilities they have, sometimes they don't respond because there's something they don't know and they want to know. And they don't necessarily voice that. A lot of people are, leaders are sometimes uncomfortable saying, I don't know.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
They feel as if they should know, or they feel as if, the people that report to them are going to expect them to just know. So the whole idea of adding the pro and con to this makes an assumption that, maybe there are things that they don't think they know. Right?
Yes.
Or you think they should know, or they think they should know and they don't, so they hesitate. Other things happen. They don't get the information back they want. So sometimes going through that pro and con thing, it's a great thought experiment for you, but it's actually an experiment to see how they react and whether it triggers action.
And again, I think like we spoke for the previous one for the guide dog case, like it pays you dividends to have a few trusted peers on your side and go, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Like I haven't had a response. What would you do? And that kind of is building the coalition again around you and making sure that you're not jumping the gun unnecessarily.
I think we're mirroring science here, the way we do this. I mean, you do an experiment and it comes out the way you had hoped once. You don't say, great, we're done. This is what happens. You want to repeat the experiment again, right? So to a degree, and then you make the results of that experiment or that iteration of the experiment available to a wider audience. We do that in science all the time. And that's essentially what you're doing here. You start with your peers, and then you're going to maybe share it with a secondary audience before your final audience, or maybe you just jump to the final audience.
Exactly. And the whole point of these experiments is, there's no right or wrong, in the sense that you're not necessarily going to get a wrong result. You're just getting a result. You're getting a signal, and then you can adjust how you move forward, right? So bearing in mind you haven't annoyed a lot of seniors by going around, and you have done your due diligence and you have got some trusted peers, that all of these things are signals. All of these things are how are we doing? Are we doing well? Do we have the right support in place? Do we have the right processes in place to continue this moving forward? So it's all kind of information that keeps you tracking along the way.
Exactly.
A couple of other scenarios that I thought for this one. So this is the optional reply we're still talking about. A couple of other ones is, if, for example, you're starting a pilot and you've been asking a business unit, tell me who your pilot users are going to be, and they're not telling you, again, because they're busy with other activities, you can probably make an educated guess, right? Again, put those forward rather than waiting on a blank sheet of paper. Just put something down and say, hey, I had an educated guess. This is what I'm thinking. I'm going to give you 5 days to come back and confirm those or make changes, but we need to move it forward. So give us your thoughts.
I think you can also, it's sort of a mini experiment to go direct to the people that you think should participate in the pilot. Sometimes they'd be glad to do it. They'll figure out how to timing do it. It's just, others haven't put the scenario together to know who to ask or gotten around to asking them.
Yeah. All right. Let's move to our number 3 experiment. And this is a very topical experiment at the moment because it involves AI, baby. So this one I call Mirror, Not a Genie. Everyone's, talking about AI and doing this in AI, doing that in AI, and getting AI to spin your communications, getting AI to spin your content, getting AI to do your planning. Fantastic. I love having AI on my team. That is, me and my analyst Claude and Gemini and Perplexity, and I love having those tools. Now, one of the best uses, I guess, that I have found, and this is part of this experiment, is to use the AI capability to argue against you, to sharpen your thinking, to make it so that you haven't missed anything off the page, and you get a more rounded, more comprehensive side of your story. So how would you run it? You can get your favorite AI tool and explain the details of your project. Now, I say this cautiously because organizations and users are at their different stages of usage. There are different approvals that are in place. So I would not put any user information. I would not put any organizational information. I would make it super generic. Let's talk about project X and let's talk about stakeholder Y. But you can describe what the outcomes of these initiatives are. You can describe what the stakeholders' views are, and are they difficult stakeholders? Are they challenging you? Are they supportive stakeholder, and so on. And then you can get the AI to give you a more holistic picture, or to challenge your view, and to give, you can say, well, what am I missing here? Can you help me see this from a different perspective, from someone who would be challenging me on these points? Can you help me see this from a perspective that I'm an end user and I struggle with the use of this new tool? Bob, I'll throw that to you because I'm sure you'll have different scenarios to contribute.
Yeah. I mean, so I've gotten into the habit of not asking AI for an answer, for asking the AI for multiple answers. So if I'm looking to build, I don't know, I'm looking to build a training plan as part of my change initiative. All right. I'm saying I would like you to give me 3 or 4 training plan options that I can then go look at and determine where to go from there.
Yeah.
And so I do a first set of processing of what I like and what I don't like, right? I might combine them, whatever the case may be, right? But I also go back to the AI and say, okay, given this scenario, which do you think would be better, A or B, and why?
Yeah.
So it could be I put in the plan that I have built from those options, or I might really like 1 or 2 of them, or one I really want to understand better. So, I mean, this whole thing is a little set of experiments to me. I'm going to see what it's going to come up with. Have a play. Have a play, as a friend of mine likes to say. Have a play. And I will experiment with different ways for the AI even to analyze. And then sometimes I'll say, I don't get this piece. I really think in our environment, with a description of the environment, obviously, we should drop this and add this. And sometimes we're going to, sometimes I'm real serious about that question. Sometimes I'm just putting something out there to see how the AI will respond.
Yeah.
But it really allows me to take some of my experience, some of my question, things I might want to validate, and doing, using the AI's power of going out and checking tons of things that are out there to help me contrast that information.
Yeah. I like using it for like specifying or tailoring communications to different user groups. Let's have a read from this notice and see if someone was burned through a reorg, how would they read into it? What is, how would they perceive the communication? This team has been part of 3 change programs in the last 3 months, right? How would they feel about this new information coming out? So having a play with those sorts of things, and it is like having a play, and you can, the great thing about AI is a conversation, right? And you can keep going backwards and forwards. I think that's the other thing I want to stress for the people that are joining us, is that is a part of the experiment series, right? You keep going backwards and forwards and go, hey, let's tweak this. Oh no, I don't like it like that. Let's go back to the first iteration and see how that plays out. So really powerful.
And one of the things that we run into in change initiatives is different cultures. It could be different company cultures, different country cultures, regional geography cultures, backgrounds. And I really like, whether I'm, I might be asking it to help me draft the letter that I'm ultimately going to edit, or come up with, plan or terminology, or we talked about training plan, how we would communicate the need for people to get educated on a tool. How can we do that in such a way that is culturally sensitive? And maybe we have multiple communication for multiple regions, because you know, and the AI can come up with that probably better than I can if I'm not directly involved in, you know, that I don't have cultural immersion in that area.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. There can be lots of cultural nuances between regions. I've had the opportunity to work in Asia and to work with Europe and to work with US, and you know, between communicating to those different regions of how we do things, it's very different.
Yeah, you know, you talked about, you know, Project X, stakeholder Y, whatever the case may be. I mean, it's good to say, you know, I'd like to get some perceptions from the AI as to how this is going to work with a person that's very hesitant, or maybe overexcited and wants to go forward too quickly, or you know, someone that just doesn't want to spend money, so they're wanting to be financially frugal. I mean, you could take these different perspectives, put it into the tool and say, you know, or if I'm dealing with this person, is there a way I should word this differently? Or what do you think of the wording that I've used? It's, you know.
You can also tie this experiment to our first experiment, to the guide dog case. And, you know, when you're going to a sponsor, when you're going to a senior leader, and get it to, you know, explain the AI, explain the scenario to the AI, and practice your conversation with the sponsor and say, hey, if I get challenged, what are the 3 things that person, that leader might want to know from me? Help me practice those.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. So this is going, I think, really well. I hope that it's giving people some thought nuggets and some really practical tools that they can use into their day-to-day change and project work. We're going to launch into our 4th experiment. Now, again, if you're joining us or if you're watching this as a recording, I'm just going to put the experiment link underneath, so people can go and grab those if you want to have a copy. If you're watching this as a replay and you've run one of the experiments or you're having questions, please hit us up on the chat below. I read all of the comments and I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear how you've run them, what happened, what are the follow-up questions that you would have. Now, let's launch into our 4th experiment, the planted dud. It sounds playful, shall we say, Bob?
It is, and I will, you know, I've done this, and it is. I can be accused of being slightly deceitful with this, and I accept that. I accept that. So as we explain in this experiment, for those of you who haven't, you know, picked them up off their website and just listening in, you basically sit with your team and you're trying to answer some sort of a question or determine a way forward. And instead of just saying, I have an idea, or 2 ideas, you try to come up with a multiple choice option. And one of the options is purposefully bad.
Just way bad.
And here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm doing. I'm using this as the experiment associated with this is determining how open people will be in sharing. Yeah, this will work. Yeah, this won't work. You know, if you're the leader, you don't want people just to default what it is that what you say because you're leader and feel as if they have to, and you know more information or whatever. So the fact that you're putting forth a multiple choice question is substantial in that it just, I don't think I know the answer. Here are answers. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
But in talking about it, do they tell you the truth that this thing just is awful? Or do they try to figure out a way to maybe make it work and not be insulting? And, you know, because if you're going through a substantial change initiative, if people don't have a level of trust to talk openly, you as the change manager have to try to do whatever you can, make some changes so that level of truth and trust will actually be put on the table and will be part of how conversations are exchanged.
Yeah. I spot on, and I think it's actually a layered approach. So one, you want to see if people speak up, but even like step 0 is seeing if people got the capacity to absorb what you're actually saying. Because a lot of the time there's so much information that's being shared in organizations that perhaps it's not even registering. So I think that's even the first step that you can do is to go, hey, I've got something to share. Is everyone listening? Is everyone paying attention? And then kind of going, okay, well, let's see, now that you're paying attention, who's going to speak up and who has got the potential to challenge this. And even if they don't challenge it, then bring it to the open table. What do we think about option C?
Yeah. And I must circle back to the, being accused of being deceptive. And I said, well, yeah, maybe you can think of it that way. I will tell people also that I don't think of it that way because I'm not testing them, I'm testing me. I, as the leader, have to create the environment so people are comfortable with saying that option stinks. Right? I don't know. We shouldn't consider that one at all. Let's not try to make that work. That's just wrong. And so if they don't, then it's my problem to create the environment.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's my issue if the team isn't engaged in the process of trying to come up with solutions to what's going on. They either don't understand the change, they're not bought into it, there's other knowledge they feel they need. To me, this is an experiment of how am I leading, or what do I need to do to lead properly?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess it's also an experiment of building that coalition as well, because if people speak up, they feel part of the solution, they feel part of putting an idea forward and going, no, that's not going to work, but maybe we could try something different, and then it builds that ownership, it builds that appreciation for the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go through that process, you share that truth, and there isn't ramifications that are negative. You're reinforcing the environment that you want to have to make that, and that you'll need to make a change initiative succeed.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And I guess it depends on the personality that you are. I think you and I can be quite playful and we appreciate humor.
Yeah.
So hopefully people see it as humorous as it playful. But of course it will depend on the type of organization. If it's a very stale environment.
And while it may have a playful element to it, and hopefully the playfulness comes out of the exercise.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, that's a problem too. Right? And that people don't see that. And I guess the edge of this experiment, because I said it's testing your own leadership. You have to be ready to hear, all right, what I'm doing isn't working. Or I'm going to have to, I don't know if the word is recover, or alter, or work on some environmental concerns that the team's behavior is pointing out.
Yeah. I love it. I do like that one. I think that's going to be part of my overall suite of experiments in the coming weeks. Now, we've also got one more to talk about. This one is called the pre-mortem, and it's not a post-mortem, it's a pre-mortem, and it's trying to anticipate what could go wrong. Or assuming that something goes wrong, it's to write out what has gone wrong and to try to fix it before it goes wrong.
Yeah. This is beyond, I think, this is beyond just coming up with, with a risk plan, a series of risks and how you'd address them. This is actually looking at, a bigger picture of something failing, some outcome occurring that was not anticipated, and it not necessarily tied to one event. Right?
Yeah.
So when I see a risk plan, I see a specific event, and I think about a specific event, right?
Yeah.
We are anticipating, the next version of a software release, and we need that to be able to implement the change. Well, what happens if it's late, or what happened? Okay, so you have specific event, specific outcomes. This is more global than that, And the more experience you have with initiatives that have gone wrong, the better this exercise becomes.
Yeah. And let's just circle back to what you said earlier. So this is not the risk register. This is not us sitting down and coming up with 20 risks and mitigations for those risks. This is not this. This is kind of thinking of it as a scenario, as a story, writing it out and engaging people along the way of, what this has happened. We assume this has happened badly. And why has it happened and what can we do? But this is before it has happened. And it's a technique that it was pioneered by a Gary Klein, who apparently was he did a lot of work into risk management, but he wasn't a risk manager or a project manager himself. He was a psychiatrist, and he did a lot of work into that area. And he found out that if people get into that mindset and actually write it out as a story, that a lot of the story becomes more believable rather than just as a risk register, right? Risk registers are quite succinct and okay, this happened. What are the mitigations? And we don't necessarily follow in the same involvement. We don't necessarily trust what could go wrong. That would never happen.
Right.
Let's put it down as a risk. So he made it so that if it's a believable outcome, a believable negative outcome, that we can anticipate that and we can mitigate it.
Sure.
I mean,
to me, I look at when I'm thinking of pre-mortems, I look at large, holistic outcome-related exercises. So what happens if we use a material and it gets banned for some reason? Right? What happens if our competition leapfrogs us before we even get this product out? What happens if for some reason our customers don't accept this at all? I mean, for some, what are the reasons? What are the reasons that could come about that they don't accept it at all? That don't involve our competition. Right. And so let's brainstorm that sort of thing. What are the possibilities?
And what can we do today, to make sure that we're on the right track for that not to happen, right?
Right. Or what can we do, to reduce the probability of that?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And the difference again between the risk register is, I think those risk registers, sometimes it depends on the situation that we're in or the organization or the culture. A lot of the time that the risk register is only opened when things have happened and we go, okay, we listed that as a risk. What do we need to do now?
Now that, yeah, I mean, hopefully you have a remediation action, and then it's a matter of just executing that action. But this is much bigger than that, and leads usually to a whole series of tasks or experiments in and of themselves. I mean, to me, a pre-mortem is a thought experiment, and it often creates other validations or thought experiments along the way to say, where are there any indications out there that this might happen?
Yeah. And it's like scenario planning, which gives us inputs. It gives us different perceptions, different perspectives, especially if it's done as a group, so in a collaborative sort of environment. Yeah. Okay.
And again, people that have had experience where things have really gone wrong are fantastic to have in this. And if those people aren't there, let's just go back one a little bit, because we were talking about AI earlier.
And
what are the worst disasters that have happened when coming up with a project to do whatever it is you're doing?
Yeah. Love that, because you can use the different thoughts from the AI to circle back and
absolutely,
and to give you some of that ammunition, maybe. Fantastic. Well, this is the 5 experiments done. Can you believe it? We've been talking for over 45 minutes, which is absolutely fantastic. Hopefully it's given people a lot to think about and a lot that they can go and try. Now, again, if you need to grab a copy of those experiments, follow this link, or you can find us on LinkedIn and connect with us. And happy to talk about experiments, happy to talk about AI, happy to talk about change and project management. Both Bob and I are on LinkedIn. We've been lucky enough to also have a library of courses on LinkedIn Learning. So if you're curious more about project management or change management, please feel free to go and check those out. Again, if you're watching this as a recording and you've got lots of burning questions, put those in the comments and we'll come back to you. We read all of the comments. Bob,
absolutely.
I am so thankful for joining me. Thank you for kicking off the experiment series on Make Change Happen. It's exciting. It's, I think, something that gives people a practical tool to apply straight away. Something that you can apply today on your own, or something that you can do with your team. It builds coalition, it builds signal and information of where you are at and what you can do to change your circumstance or to change your perception. And it's something that we can all do. So they're really practical and useful tips, and hopefully people can take that away.
Indeed. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was so much fun. And we can do it again when people want to hear more about experiments and change.
This is only a few. I think we've got more experiments we can ultimately talk about.
We've got lots more behind. Yes. So thank you, everyone, and appreciate your time and attention being here.
Thank you, everybody.
With us.